We are following developments in the negotiations over a U.S. proposal for a ceasefire in Gaza. A source familiar with the talks tonight telling CNN Hamas's response is, quote, positive, but requires further clarifications, though U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff is calling it, quote, totally unacceptable. Hamas has agreed to the return of hostages in exchange for Palestinian prisoners, but is repeating calls for a permanent end to the war, which is not guaranteed in this plan. Joining us now is CNN senior military analyst and former NATO Supreme Allied Commander Admiral James Stavridis. He's also a partner at the investment firm, the Carlyle Group, and author of The Admiral's Bookshelf. Admiral, thank you so much for being here with us this evening. Do you think there will be a deal without guarantees it will lead to a permanent end of this war? And does Israel even agree to any deal that includes that?
Yeah, I feel like, Jessica, how many times have we seen this movie now? It's again and again and again. There is Hamas. They simply want a way to continue on and retake control of the Gaza Strip. And it's, in my view, it's not going to happen. They need to kind of wake up and smell the tea here. I think they're getting the best deal they can possibly get. Unfortunately, I'm pessimistic. I'd say there's a 1 in 4, 1 in 5 chance, but not much above that. And if you look at Jerusalem, and Benjamin Netanyahu, he is talking consistently about occupying at least the northern part. I think the chances of a ceasefire are not very good right now. I wish that weren't the case, but that's my assessment.
Israel's military tonight also confirming Hamas leader Mohammed Sinwar was recently killed in an Israeli airstrike. What does that mean for the negotiations? And also, what do we know about who's in charge of Hamas?
It is a good thing for the negotiations that the brother of the original leader, Yahya Sinwar, has now been confirmed to be dead. The good news is he was a hardliner. There was, I think, very low chances of a ceasefire. In terms of who's running it now, unclear. And this often is the case when you go after terrorist organizations. You cut off one or two, the number one, the number two, the number three, but someone else jumps up and takes their place. So bottom line, it's a confused command control network inside Hamas, but none of that is encouraging in terms of getting to a ceasefire, unfortunately.
I also want to ask you about this report by the United Nations nuclear watchdog that has found Iran is increasing its stockpile of uranium to near weapons grade levels. As of 2 weeks ago, Iran had 900 pounds of uranium enriched up to 60%. That's almost a 50% increase since the last report in February. So my question to you is, how much of a concern is this information? And are these the type of numbers where we're talking about a functional nuclear weapon?
Let me take the second part first, because it's better news. No, they're not at the point where they could immediately have a functional nuclear weapon. And then it would take them another year to develop the means to deliver it anywhere. So certainly we have time here. But the bad news is, I think the mullahs are playing with fire here as follows. Netanyahu has been very clear about his desire to roll in and take out as much of the Iranian nuclear program as he can at this moment because Iran is so weak. Its air defenses are so weak. So on the one hand, you've got the Israelis really chomping at the bit to go in and strike. And on the other hand, with the Trump administration, at the moment, President Trump and Envoy Witkoff are very clear that they would much rather have a diplomatic outcome here. But when there are credible reports like this that Iran is enriching, think how that lands in the Oval Office. Think how that lands for President Trump. He looks at that as real defiance on the part of the mullahs. I think Tehran is on the road to a whole series of strikes against them if they don't wake up to the realities of what is happening and get to the negotiating table quickly.
Yeah, because obviously there's a lot of talking that can be done, but if in fact this is what's going on in real time, it makes a deal pretty difficult to do.
Exactly. Let's hope Tehran understands that. And again, I'll close where I said a moment ago, they are playing with fire here, almost literally.
Wow. I also want to ask you about Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who is in Singapore this week, reassured the Indo-Pacific allies that they're not going to be left alone in the face of Chinese aggression. Now, China is tonight pushing back on those remarks, warning the U.S. should not, quote, play with fire over Taiwan. Is this a warning sign? What do you think about this back and forth?
I read Secretary Hegseth's comments and I agree with them. What he's trying to do is, as you said, encourage our allies, notably Japan and South Korea, but also the Philippines, Thailand, Taiwan, all of them take encouragement from his quite forthright stance here. And number two, he is sending a signal to China that we're going to work hard to bring together our allies and partners and friends in the region. Overall, I think the tenor and tone of his remarks, particularly as delivered at this very important annual Shangri-La conference, I've attended it many times myself, I think he hit the right notes there. And as far as China's response, I think that's predictable, and the best way to avoid getting into a war in the Pacific is for our allies, partners, and friends to increase their defense spending, which they are doing, and to continue partnership with the United States. Overall, I'm less concerned about what China says, more concerned that we continue to build those alliances, those partnerships, those friendships in the Pacific. That creates deterrence. That's what will avoid war.
And then there's this aspect, obviously, of the talks with China that the U.S. is having. And this one aspect of those talks, which is about exporting their rare earth minerals. And first we saw Trump pursuing this in a deal with Ukraine. Now China, rare earth minerals keep coming up. Is this a next battlefront? Why are we hearing more and more about this?
Because these minerals are absolutely critical, not only to defense technologies, but also very broadly to the creation of many things in the high-tech end of all of our economies. China has been very methodical in cornering the market on these and ensuring that they have the strongest controls. So the United States is waking up to this and is moving out on a variety of fronts, including one you may not have thought of, I think few have, which is deep seabed mining.
Yep,
on
I had
the floor
thought of
of
that
the
one.
oceans. Yep, the Admiral's going to bring it up. Go to sea, and it's frankly, there are nodules on the bottom of the ocean that can be harvested. There are some challenges, environmental, legal, etc. But it's an example of how the United States needs to broaden its view of how we get after strategic minerals, be it in Ukraine, with other allies and partners, our own sources, or looking to the deep seabed in our exclusive economic zone offshore.
Really interesting stuff. Admiral, thanks so much for being here with us.
Thanks, Jessica.